personalization. Personalization that pays off. Delivering compliant, scalable customer journeys and financial services. Please welcome Mark Melton, the U.S. Market Development and Partnership Leader at Magnolia. Mark, thank you so much.
Oh, wow, it's small. All right. Cool. So I think this is our third year here, and this is the this is the coldest year it's been in this room, so appreciate that. So today we're not talking about kind of Amazon level personalization. What we want to try to give you is some actual practical frameworks to take away, and not just keep this very theoretical. So we're going to start with. We're going to start just kind of why personalization at all. Obviously, the challenges that we all face, and then, like I said, giving you some solutions that you can take back and kind of start on today, and maybe some things to think about. A bit about us. Gentleman was right. We are a vendor in this space. We're a content management company, a DXP, whatever you guys want to call it these days, but effectively how people are organizing web experiences or digital experiences. So we think of ourselves as kind of the hub for mashing up either content, media, or anything in between. We're also lucky to be presenting with one of our partners, and we use partners to take what individual institutions want to do and mold that into the piece of clay that looks like them inside Magnolia. So a little bit of background on us. So personalization, it's not new, but in financial services, it's becoming existential. It's kind of survival level important, right? People no longer are choosing the most convenient bank because it's down the street, or the biggest one. They want to work with a company or institution that gets them, right? And it's more than just, when I log in, I don't want to be entertained. We're really looking for kind of a reassurance, something that you understand my goals, something that I know my data is safe, that you get me, right? That you are going to give me a relevant message or a guidance at the right time. All on that built on some level of trust. So where does that all come from, right? It's all of us in this room aren't being, the experience isn't coming from other banks and other insurance companies. It's coming from for companies like, Netflix and Spotify, right? It's this idea that people get you and your interactions with them are quick and valuable. So Accenture says that about 60% of people out there expect that the message is going to be tailored to me, but really only 20% of them feel like they're actually getting that. So the gap really represents a pretty big opportunity. And then, in an industry where lots of things look the same, rate cards are the same, insurance looks kind of the same, what we're really kind of focusing on is selling experiences, right? It's what kind of company am I working with here? Is this a relationship that is beneficial to me other than the product that I wanted to buy? The kind of the digital first players like Chime and SoFi, they're not just winning because of price, they're winning because they're providing a really cool experience, right? They are using data and content to guide customers along, and they're sort of in control, but the end user feels like they're getting me, right? So traditional institutions can absolutely do the same thing. They just need to start with the right foundation. As a vendor in this space, we speak with lots of people, right? People say, we started on a personalization journey. So we've done a 360 customer map, and maybe we invested in a customer data platform, and we're rolling that out, and everything looks great, and we hear a group over here is doing an AI kind of pilot, and we're all excited about that. But then when we actually talk to them about like what's live and in the public and helping people, generally the answer is, well, we have the banner swaps on our homepage, right? Or we're using a different greeting on an email. So it's pretty low-level stuff with these really lofty ideas. And when done correctly, you really turn this from kind of a marketing gimmick or trick into a service, right? You're creating a service for people who are looking for that. So it may sound a bit Pollyanna, but everybody here would like to help people. So imagine being able to, at the right time, suggest a product or a service that can reduce an overdraft fee or something like that. So it can actually have an impact on people's lives. And that's when personalization turns into personalization with the purpose, right? So the opportunity is massive. The risk associated is massive as well if you get it wrong. So let's look at a couple of challenges. So the question isn't like, okay, we're scared and should we do this at all? It's how can you do a personalization campaign responsibly, at scale, with no risk or complexity. Look at some of the things that get in the way, and these are probably familiar with in your organizations as well, but we talk about legacy technology. What is that? So everybody has something that has grown up with them for some time. Generally speaking, those things are not terribly modern, and they're not the easiest things to get data out of. We work with customers that have literally a specialized team that only works with this one application because that's the only thing that they know, and that's the only people who know it. Sometimes that's hard to leverage. There are a lot of regulatory constraints, and they change a lot. GDPR and PII and all these kinds of things. Sometimes marketeers just say, I don't know if we're up to speed on what the regulation is, so we'll just kind of do nothing. You see tons of fragmented data. There's marketing data, there's probably product data, there's maybe some legal data, and no one really knows how to use all that together. And then the last thing is, how do you get an ROI on content when it sits forever? And then once it's finally delivered, kind of that moment's passed, right? And then it's stale. So these aren't isolated issues. They're really a symptom of disconnected systems and processes and people. So what have we seen work? So this is hopefully you can take away and actually do something with today. Kind of three key pillars to this. So we're going to dive into each one of these, and let's start with what is already right within your reach, right? And this may sound terribly obvious, but you use what you have, right? You guys have probably plenty of all kinds of data that you want. You've had customers forever and ever and ever. They've matured with you over time. You know so much about them, right? We worked with a regional bank that wanted to kind of step up its personalization and how they talk to customers and all these kinds of things. And they thought, well, I guess we'll just kind of start over from scratch, rip it out. And really what we were able to suggest is it's already there, just connect it, right? Just connect the dots. And within a short period of time, they were kind of talking different and talking about their brand differently. So there's no new technical something to buy, there's no new licenses, there's no infrastructure. It's just using a different strategy for the data that you guys already have. So most of you guys don't. There's risks in getting it wrong. There's risks in being overzealous. There's risks in creepy, like you know too much about me. Amazon does a good job of that, but they're just a marketplace, so I guess no one really cares. But there is a balance, and I think that's a bit of a, oh, there we go. It's a bit of a content plus message solve. If you've got content that maps to something that might be a little oversharing, it then becomes purposeful and then more relevant. So maybe it's the message with the content, right? Okay, so sorry. So you guys have this data. Where do we start? So why don't we start with goals? It's pretty straightforward one, right? So we'll dive into each of these. So lots of people say, okay, we want to do personalization. And then what we learn is that marketing has a goal of engagement. And maybe the product team has a goal of conversions. And then you've got compliance that just says, we don't want to be in the headlines, right? So the goals are all a bit different. So what we find works probably better is to look at a goal that kind of maybe spans a few of those, like maybe increasing digital adoption among existing customers. So something that two parties can be involved within one. And now you're taking kind of this, we want to do personalization into something that is tons more focused, it's a lot more measurable, and then probably most important, it's something that actually people will give money from and fund it, right? A goal, I'm stating the obvious, becomes something that is an initiative rather than just kind of an experiment. The second thing is so governance feels like this thing that is always there, no one really can see it, and everyone doesn't know what it is, and it's bureaucracy or red tape. And what it could turn into is really an insurance policy, right, in some regards. If it's done correctly and done right and everybody kind of knows the guardrails there, then it could actually build confidence, and confidence can actually build some speed. So having everybody involved in what this process or this governance policy is can actually build speed, as you don't have to worry about, are we doing this right, or are we doing this wrong, or are we going to get our hands slapped after we're halfway down this path. So looking at data, you can't really personalize anything that you don't get. Most companies we talk to have no idea how fragmented their data is. I'm sure you guys see this as well. One thing to think about is the quality of that data. So the gentleman's question about what is a risk? I mean, there's compliance risks, there's all these, but there's also just a inconsistent message or a duplicate message. It just derails all of the effort way more than a bad technology choice would do. So it's really thinking about that quality too, because there's always different sources of truth, if you will. This can be kind of a personalization audit, as it were, rather than just an exercise in looking. And it's not, you don't need more data, you just need to visually be able to access the stuff that you have and that you already own. And then maybe pretty obvious, but this is kind of where this idea of personalization becomes something that's more tangible. So thinking about where would we insert some content or a message at our user journey, right? If say someone's credit card was going to expire and you needed to renew it, and instead of sending hey, you can renew your credit card, if the relevant message using the data was, hey, Mark, you have one free flight that you didn't use, and that's why the card will renew. That's a more relevant message than your card's renewing, and it's time to renew your card. So it's kind of knowing when to say something, and then also why you're saying it. The second kind of big pillar here is just to unify this thing of data and content. So we just learned that marketing and all of these institutions are really data rich. Now let's look at why they're really access poor, right? Again, data's here, content's over here, and then personalization is this thing in the middle that is unachievable, right? It stays in a theoretical, and it's not very practical. So the same story, say we have a policy is renewing in 90 days, right? And the message is we want to renew that clearly. But what we find is there's a core system that holds the policy. It's there. Marketing can't really get that without maybe that special IT team. So instead of doing, kind of a personalized message or something that's really specific and relevant, you send a blanket offer of something. And it's not personalization, and it turns into a compromise. And again, it's not a data problem or content problem. It's just a connectivity problem. So this is where kind of a modern sort of modular architecture can really change everything. So as a platform that produces digital experiences, we want to express to people that all of these things, all of these old systems and new systems can be brought together in one kind of unified authoring place, right? So via APIs and all these ways that machines can talk to machines, plug in what you already have, right? Old stuff, new stuff, legacy stuff, change it out as you go along. You really have, but the person who's creating experiences, the team of people who are creating experiences, has all the data in one single interface. It sounds like a lofty goal, but we have lots of people that are doing it, and it really is just about mapping and connecting and doing that. It doesn't mean kind of starting over from scratch. It just means connecting all of these things smarter. And then, when you do this, you don't just get a lot of speed or anything like that. You get a lot more control. What you also get, and you can be proud of, and is that you're reusing things that are approved, right? So when an approved message is personalized, you don't have to worry that it's out of compliance. You're getting an audit trail, which people love, of who did what, when. So the idea is that marketing can move faster, and nothing really is falling through the cracks. And why would that matter to you guys, right? These are probably fairly obvious, but launch campaigns a lot faster. Do it without, with some independence, right? Create your own segments. Create your own personalization messages. Everything's approved. Look at what the market is doing. Look at what your competition's doing. Look what the world is doing, and be able to match a message there without having the same processes of tickets and all those kinds of things. Messages are timely now; they're relevant because they're out faster. And then, we see lots of people get more creative with what they can do because they're not sort of saying, we're going to do all this, and then we're end up getting our, stuck with all of the technical hoops we have to jump through. And the last pillar, so it's 2025, so we have to talk about what is AI, and all of this future stuff. So you asked, what are the risks? Well, clearly AI is a huge risk. There could be privacy risks. There's weird bias risks. There's totally interesting, inconsistent tones. I'm sure you've all experienced. All that could lead to certainly a lack of trust, which you've done such a good job of building up. And a risk is you got this wrong. You got off a message off tone, and you just undid all this credibility, right? Using AI the wrong way. So we all know what this is, or what the risks here is. I think everybody's familiar with AI at this point in their lives. We don't, there's a little bit of a risk in putting that message out there. So instead of thinking about generative AI, so content that goes from ChatGPT or OpenAI or whoever to someone's eyeballs, we think about AI in a very, there's a quieter version, there's a less scary version, and it's to do things that automate processes that no one really sees that do have a big impact on things. So like, how can you maybe use it to find new segments, to figure out like behavioral patterns, maybe to figure out a moment to engage or re-engage. These are all things that are not, going to a customer's eyeballs, but they do make a big difference. So talk a little bit about those. So we and lots of people now are using AI to say, okay, we've got behavior on the web. We're finding that people are creating their own segments. We thought that it was home and auto. That was the only thing we offered. Now we're figuring out there's auto from people from New York who are only a part-time driver, and that's a new policy. So the behavioral way is mapping up a session on a website or on a mobile phone or something like that, and then stitching it all together to create these segments that you didn't even know existed. One thing kind of fundamental to anything that is web-based at this point still is SEO. So there are a lot of underlying tenets of SEO that must be there, or whatever you say or whatever content you have is not going to ever fall where it needs to be. It's still like that. And so we see a lot of customers, and we push for using AI to basically populate metadata. So lots of companies will work with third-party agencies or creative shops that give them assets and media and all kinds of things like that. And their job isn't really to think about metadata, and so sometimes it goes without being looked at. So we see lots of value in having AI at least produce something that Google says we must have for it to even be something we can use. It can do targeting, so it can figure out, AI meaning, can figure out when that optimal time is. There's lots of tools that we use to see where people are dropping off pages and not scrolling behind, and is the offer that you created below the fold. So some data like that can make suggestions on what you would do normally by looking through reports and spreadsheets and things like that. And that would be speeding up all that analytical data. So AI in our world certainly no one's getting replaced, but it's just removing some of the bottlenecks that are there and speeding up the mundane and the stuff that is just fundamental to the campaign or what have you. So generative AI, a little bit different. That's putting words directly from a large language model onto the web or mobile or what have you. This is probably early in adoption. We see lots of brands that we work outside of a regulated financial service industry, like in tourism, that are much more easily adopting this because their brands are fun and all those kinds of things. In our regulated industries, we see people using generative AI for a couple of reasons that are still driving value. They're creating segments. Again, they're discovering segments they didn't know they had. They're creating one version of the segment that was the sort of the parent version of segments. They're using AI to generate the segment again for the segment, or excuse me, the content for the segment that they're learning. But it doesn't go anywhere. It doesn't go to production. What it does is sit in someone's inbox or workspace or something as a placeholder to say, this is something we want to push. This is pieces of content. Maybe the words are all wrong. Maybe the images are all wrong. But at least to give someone, a clear objective to go do and then fill out. So you're using it to say, let's get to this. It's a piece of work waiting for somebody. So wrapping everything up, most financial institutions, systems, data, they don't talk to each other. I think everybody's familiar with that. Marketing owns CMS usually because that's how words and pictures get on the internet. IT owns data because that's what they do. And content or approvals is owned by this compliant group. And by the time you've gone across all three of these, that customer moment to do something is past, right? We work with a large organization, and they said, we've stopped calling it personalization because this thing, and now we just calling it doing our job better or well, right? And that's, I think, the goal is to make this thing of personalization not a risk or whatever. It's just to kind of make it invisible, and then you're just doing the right thing for the customer. Sorry. So I think the takeaway here is like the trust that you guys have been working so long to build up now has to be thought about. How do you do that digitally with a different audience? You got to do it in real time. You have to do it at scale. All these different things, and you know, it's just different learning, right? So, if you'd like to learn more, certainly come by and see us. We're in the vendor room as well, and we can kind of show you how this might all work. Thanks. I didn't know if I had time for questions.
I probably do, yeah.
If anyone has any questions, I'm happy to. I know I'm holding up lunch, so clearly there's going to be no questions.
Well, I know everyone's juggling different sessions, Mark.
No problem.
So our next speaker is